Hi, I'm Gary, and I want to talk to you about a real issue which I see at the moment, which is how we're going to pay for the infrastructure, the NVIDIA GPUs, the CoreWeaves, the whole 9 yards, which is being rolled out. Because today it's very expensive to run. Tokens, which the whole system relies on, are very expensive, much more expensive than the CPU cycles we used to have with an x86 or an ARM server in a rack. Basically, if the tokens can't make money, if the consumers, i.e. the software consumers, the Salesforce, the ServiceNows, the Palantirs, the e-commerce sites, if they can't make enough money out of it, if they can't add value to every seat to keep their margin, to keep their growth, then we're going to struggle. We're going to find that those customers can't afford to spend because they can't afford their valuation to drop. In fact, it's a bit of a catch-22. They're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. If they don't spend, they're not going to be competitive in the market without the AI features. And if they do spend, hey, they're going to be just paying too much NVIDIA tax, too much data center tax effectively. So it affects the whole of the chain. And I now want to just go and look a little bit about how this works. I'm going to drop onto my website, prioryhouse.com, to let you see. It's not yet really clear how this is going to go. It's not yet clear how much value, how much the cost structure is going to be. So this is really a question, and I really would like you guys to give me your feedback. So basically, I'm going to talk about mega tokens, millions of tokens, and I'm going to look at how they get used. And you'll see here, they're not free. They're very expensive, actually, in the scale that we need to use them. And without that model, people like NVIDIA really, and CoreWeave, have a real struggle. And really the problem is that the companies that are using it need to show enough added value to price their seats more valuably. These different types of use models give these different types of number of millions of tokens per month. Obviously, as things go forward, probably we're going to be using more tokens. We're going to be replacing more jobs because that's where the effective savings have got to come from to pay for these tokens. I'm also at the end going to look at how the tokens price differently on the different NVIDIA architectures, ranging from A100 to H200 through to Blackwell. So you can see if you look in the middle, these types of analysis tools are using these amounts of tokens. Now, if we go out and we look at what a CoreWeave or the typical cost per megatokens on Blackwell is the cheapest. It's considerably cheaper than H200. This is a very big message for NVIDIA stockholders. I am one. I do hold many of these companies in my portfolio. I've often been worried about the Palantir valuation, but hey, they're growing like Topsy. And these are the costs, and you can see some pretty excruciating costs down here. Obviously, media from X-rays, from imagery, we're looking at these sorts of costs. Might be a lot higher, might be a lot lower, but I think all we know, just like memory in your computer, you're going to need more of it as we move forwards. Let's try and fit those use models into some of those categories. And here I've tried to explain what's a classic SaaS company, right through to the types of companies, a little bit more about how they break out. If I then go through and I assume that these companies are going to need to maintain their EBIT per user, their margins, both gross and net, looking at the number of users they've got, looking at their revenues, looking at these new costs, because running AI is a couple of orders more expensive than just running a data center, running x86 type of ServiceNow or Workday or, pick anything. Could be e-commerce, could be anything. We look at the revenues of these companies, Microsoft, Oracle, and so on. All pure play software companies. The problem becomes a little bit more serious if you've got hardware in the equation. We're not going to deal with people like that at the moment. I've then looked at what their estimated user count is, and then I've tried to add in the growth, and then the extra revenue per user. And this is not assuming we're going to grow usage. This is just saying with the same amount of usage, same amount of users, but now doing more expensive AI, how does that fit? And you can see they've got to add a lot of revenue. Now, some of these companies that are not yet profitable have got a real problem, because the more they add, the more they lose. And that is a huge problem. So being profitable is going to be a very, very, very key part of this. I'm not trying to make any conclusions here. I'm trying to throw up as many questions as I can for you to look at and research and perhaps comment on. What I did want to pull out is that an interesting feature, which is when I looked at the cost per million tokens, megatokens, I'm seeing a huge difference. And I hadn't really seen this before. As a long-time NVIDIA holder, I've owned it since 2014. Blackwell is a lot cheaper, less than half of the price. I assume that Rubin will be even cheaper. And what this really tells you is not just whether you've got these fast GPUs. It's not whether we've got them, or I'm in the UK, but I basically say the US chip makers, Chinese chip makers, if they can't get them at the price per megatoken, which frankly NVIDIA is the clear leader, then it doesn't matter whether you've got it or not. You can't afford to run it. You can't afford the cooling. You can't afford the bricks and mortar to build the data center, the power station that you're going to have baked in on site. So you can read this for yourself on priorihouse.com. But really what I think is really important is that this whole stack, the profit of the infra, the NVIDIAs, the CoreWeaves, the Nebius, the Vertivs, and so on, is so geared to the fact that somebody is going to have to pay for it. The software companies are going to have to pay NVIDIA. The end users are going to have to pay the software companies. Obviously, the revenue in the software world will be much, 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 much higher than the NVIDIA revenues, because it has to be. Please go ahead. Please comment. Please email me, gary@priorihouse.com. And I'm very interested to see your views, and thank you very much for my first post.